For a while now, NATO members have recognized that space remains the last domain of current warfare. Now, to discuss this and the ongoing development of NATO capabilities in the space sector, we are joined by Colonel Sylvain Debarre, the Director of NATO Space Centre for Excellence. Thank you so much for being with us. I would like to start off with what is the current threat level in space and what are the key challenges for the NATO alliance in that domain?
Yes, actually, you're right. Space was considered as a very reliable domain and very safe for decades now. And now we are facing every single day specific threats that we need to take into account. So militarization of space is actually something that is brand new, and we need to take that into consideration. A lot of nations have established their own space commands in 2019. And by the way, for NATO, it's actually the same. NATO is fully aware of that, and NATO is fully aware that we need to protect and defend our space assets. So back in 2019, NATO has released its overarching space policy, and of course the idea is to implement space fully by 2030 to make sure that we are protecting our space assets and to make sure that we won't have any lack of services of space for the other components. But space is, by the way, no longer just an enabler. Space is definitely own warfighting domain that can provide its own effects. So that's the aim of NATO in the space domain.
And in terms of the actual alignment that we see of NATO's potential adversaries, we know that when we talk about areas such as the High North, then we see some of alliance of China and Russia, for example, and kind of joining together as the adversaries for NATO. Is that the same principle in the space domain as well?
Yes, I think we can say that we need to pay attention to that kind of threats, and we need to evaluate continuously what is the level of threat that we are facing. Of course, we have big challenges, specifically alongside the eastern flank of the alliance. So that's something that we are monitoring very closely. And of course, the idea is to see how we can face that and how we can leverage our way to be able to be in a position to deter and defend in the space domain. So it's something that we are evaluating continuously by evaluating those space capabilities that we have in front of us, and then to build up our own capabilities to make sure that we are in a position to deter and defend in the space domain.
And when you talk about these specific capabilities, what sort of innovations potentially is NATO currently considering to bolster its presence in the space?
Yeah, I think innovation is a great part of the challenge that we have, because of course space is a very, very dynamic domain, and the space industry just doesn't wait for us. So we need to be aware of what are the capabilities, what are the concepts, or what are the emerging and disruptive technologies that actually exist and that would be developed in the future. And we need to identify them, we need to track them, and we need to encourage them once it's of NATO's interest. So it's something that we do from the NATO's perspective and at the NATO Space Centre of Excellence to track those space trends and to encourage the one that deserve to be encouraged within the alliance.
And so just to clarify, perhaps, do we understand correctly that in terms of any space innovation, it's actually going to be industry-led, with countries making their own sovereign decisions to follow?
I think we should improve our relationship with the space industry. I think NATO is aware of that, and actually NATO has released its NATO commercial space strategy just last year. And of course, we push our efforts in innovation, in more agile projects, in a more agile way to make procurements and to enhance our partnership with the space industry. It's something that we are trying to improve. Of course, there is still a lot of work to be done, but I think we are on the right direction.
And so in terms of these key challenges, what are they at present, if you could maybe highlight some of them?
Actually, we need to work with the space industry at the same battle rhythm. It's still challenging because now we have new space startups just popping up every single week. So the idea is just to synchronize our efforts with the industry efforts. So it's, I think, the greatest challenge that we have in front of us.
And we know that when it comes to conventional warfare, Western European nations primarily lead in terms of industrial buildup. Is space potentially a place where you see Eastern European companies or NATO's eastern flank possibly taking a greater charge of these developments?
I think there is a place for everybody in this overall effort. We have a lot of emerging nations that have great expectations in the space domain as well, and we need to take that into consideration. You know, we do not have any any limits in the space domain, so we need to take into consideration every potential help or contribution that could be of interest of NATO. And in this regard, the Eastern nations of the alliance are providing a great effort as well. I can take one example. Poland, for instance, is one of the most active partners that we have, or stakeholders that we have within the NATO Space Centre of Excellence. So, of course, it's very much appreciated. And yeah, I think there is a room for everybody.
And finally, just very quickly, we know that Russia, for example, has been tied in a war in Ukraine, and it has largely undermined its potential capabilities that could be otherwise allocated elsewhere to other theatres of war. Is this the same, or does this principle also apply to space in terms of positioning Russia to be a strong player in space?
Well, I think it's very difficult to answer this question. Of course, the Ukrainian conflict is something that we are focusing on as well. There is a specific center that has been established just 2 years ago in Poland, by the way, the JTEC. It's a NATO-Ukrainian center that actually focuses on lessons learned from the Ukrainian conflicts. It's, of course, very valuable for NATO to learn about the way the Ukrainians are conducting this specific war, and at the same time, it's very valuable for the Ukrainians because it's a concrete way for them to be advised by NATO. So it's a win-win situation in this regard. So yes, of course, analysis and lessons learned from this conflict is something that we are paying attention to.
Colonel, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching from Paris for TVP World, Zuzanna, Jurek.